Welcome to RomWills Money Matters. Vending can lead to something bigger. That's one of the things. It can lead to something bigger. Let me tell a story. I remember I wrote a pamphlet called Finding a Good Man. I would sell them at vending shows. So only sold them for $1. And the reason why I made it just for $1, because sometimes people would stop by the table, and especially young ladies, and they would show some interest. But they wouldn't want to buy whatever else that I had. And I said, hold up, let me do this for them. Okay. So I made this pamphlet for them. And it was technically 12 pages, but it was really written on 11 pages. And it wasn't anything big to me. It was just, to me, it was like having a raffle ticket. All right. Now remember, this young lady, she purchased it, and I didn't think anything of it. But then she contacted me, and she wanted me to be on this DC public access show, DC cable show, and it was called Love and Happiness, and it was just based off of this pamphlet. And I remember I did that show, and really it led to me being right here. It really led to me being right here. I was able to do a lot of stuff, impact a lot of people, and it led to something bigger. But where did it start at? Vending. You never know, whatever you vend, whatever you selling can lead to something bigger. Like I've talked many times about doing the Harlem Book Fair, and now I always talk about like when I almost got in a fight there. But it led to something bigger, like two things. One, it led to a book signing. Okay, that's one, but even bigger, one of the men who bought the book actually owned a distribution company. And he liked the book, so he got a whole bunch of books, sent it out to more people. See, and whatever that you're selling, whatever you have could lead to something bigger. Like you could have food, you could be at one of those farmers markets. Somebody who has maybe a grocery store, they can come by and get it. Or say that you have some cookies or something like that. It could lead to something bigger. Remember, when I was still married, me and my wife, she was making vegan cookies, and we had 4 stores we would take them to. So, it could always lead to something. It could lead to food, or you might have a product there. You might have a product, and somebody who owns some stores, they could say, hey, let me put it in there. Or remember, Uncle Rom, I had 1,000 jobs, but I also had some other businesses. I also had some athletic shirts that I was selling. I ain't gonna say what the name was, and rest in peace, D'Angelo. Rest in peace, D'Angelo. I actually gave him a shirt. Well, it was D'Angelo. But whatever the case, it can always lead to something. Now, when you're doing these vending shows, you don't want to think that like, oh, I'll get something bigger, but you never know who you're talking to. Like another show I did, it wasn't a show. I was doing a book signing at this vegan restaurant in the Baltimore area. And I told you, I only sold 1 book. But the lady who got the book, she had a big old house where she would have different seminars and stuff like that. So that $10 book led to something bigger, led to me getting several thousand dollars. Because how many things did I do with her? Yeah, at least 5 things at her house. You never know. See, you whatever you're selling, you never know what connections that you can make that can be better. Now, like I said, you don't want to go in thinking, oh, I'm going to make this connection. You want to go in and just do your regular thing. You want to make that money back. You want to just sell it. You trying to make your booth fee back. You trying to just make that money. That's the most important thing. You don't want to think about it, but you never know who you're talking with. You never know who might pick up your book or whatever your product is. I'm thinking books. Because when I was selling primarily books, I didn't think about who would get them, who would ever, and I made a lot of connections with some bookstores. I made a lot of connections. Like this one book chain that was in the DC area. I was selling some books and dude was like, hey, just come by. Just come by. You never know who will see your stuff. You could be selling clothes, you could be selling food. Like what if you're selling food and you have like some small grocery stores in the area, like want to get your stuff. And in fact, you might get one grocery store, but then owners of some other grocery stores might see it and be like, oh, we want to get that too. You never know. You never know. Or you could be one of those vendors who's making food for people at the vending show. And that makes a lot. In fact, I'll talk about that later. I'll talk about that in a few weeks. But you can make some connections there. See, whatever you're vending, you never know who the person is getting your stuff. You never know. They can hook you up with something. Definitely hook you up with other shows. They could tell you about some things. They could say, hey, you want to show up to this? Because there's been quite a few things that I did. And the most the people would do was have me come do their shows. They would say, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. In fact, there was one person, and I ain't going to talk about this. This didn't work out, but I was supposed to do some vending at a major comedy show with a major comedian. And there was some confusion there. But that can happen. That can happen. See, when you're doing your vending, yes, you want to sell it to the people getting there, but you never know who that person is. You never know. Because of all the vending shows that I've done, trust me, I've made connections with bigger events, bigger things, more money. Like I said, when I did that show back in the day, Love and Happiness, it was because one young lady had got my $1 pamphlet. Like in later years when I was doing all these seminars at that woman's house, that was the only person to get my book. So you want to think about that. You want to think about that. You still want to do a great job no matter what. And that's why you want to have great presentation. You never know how far you can go. You never know what connections you can make. You never know what store owners, I mean, they could have anything. You could have something for beards. Me and my sons last weekend were walking around a local mall that's going down, but they were having all these vendors. And there was one guy, he was selling some stuff for beards. There's no telling where he can get that in, no telling what connections he would make, all right? So anyway, I want y'all to think about that. Whatever you do in vending, it can still lead to something bigger, all right? So anyway, that's all I have for today. You know the deal. Let's go make that money.